A distress beacon drifted through the endless dark, silent for years, lost among the stars. It was never meant for human ears. It was a desperate call for help, one last plea from a dying empire. The signal was supposed to vanish in the void, unseen, unheard, but it didn't. It reached Earth, and humanity, curious, stubborn, and far too bold, decided to answer. That single choice would change the fate of the galaxy. It started in silence. On the far edge of Earth's influence, in the lonely orbit of Neptune, a listening post called Deep Space Array 12 watched the void. It was one of dozens, machines and scientists assigned to scan the endless night for whispers from beyond. Most days, they heard nothing but the static hum of space, the slow pulse of dying stars, and the distant echoes of human satellites. But that night the quiet broke. The shift supervisor, a young astrophysicist named Dr. Elias Rourke, almost ignored the strange pattern flashing across his console. At first, it looked like background noise, one of the countless bursts of radiation that passed through the void. But there was something unusual about it. The signal had structure. He frowned and leaned closer. The pulses weren't random. They repeated. They folded over themselves in a rhythm far too precise to be natural. "Computer, isolate frequency," Elias ordered. The machine obeyed, cutting away the static. What remained was eerie, a narrow-band transmission, faint but persistent, carrying across light years. Elias called in the others. Within an hour, the small station's crew had gathered around the console, eyes wide as the signal unfolded. This wasn't noise. This wasn't human. It was a message. For days, the scientists worked without sleep. The message was heavily layered, wrapped in strange mathematical sequences that didn't match any known encryption. But mathematics was a universal language, and slowly, patterns began to emerge. One by one, numbers turned into coordinates. Coordinates turned into symbols. Symbols became words. When the first phrase appeared on the screen, the crew fell silent. "We are dying. To anyone who can hear us, help." Elias stared, his mouth dry. It was unmistakable, a plea written in terms so simple it could reach across species. Whoever had sent this message had known it might be found by strangers. They had written it for anyone, for anything, for humanity. News traveled quickly. Within hours, the decoded signal reached Earth. In hidden conference rooms and government chambers, the most powerful people on the planet argued. Some said it was a trick, perhaps an old transmission bouncing through the void, perhaps a trap laid by unknown enemies. Others argued it was the greatest discovery in history, proof at last that humanity was not alone. But one fact silenced all debate. The signal was fresh. It had been sent less than a decade ago, and its origin was terrifyingly close, just beyond the Orion Arm, inside a cluster of star systems humanity had mapped but never touched. "Someone out there is alive," Elias whispered to himself when he read the report. "And they need help." But the question echoed across the halls of power. Should humanity answer? In the shadows of Earth's hidden intelligence agencies, not everyone celebrated. The veterans of deep space policy remembered an old doctrine, whispered only in classified briefings: the Terran silence. It was the belief that humanity should remain quiet, that shouting into the dark was dangerous, because no one knew what might be listening. And now, without warning, the silence was broken, not by choice but by accident. The signal had come to them. Some argued that responding could bring disaster. If one empire was dying, then something else was killing them. And that something might be watching the stars, waiting to see who would answer, but others argued differently. Humanity had always been explorers, risk-takers, predators at heart. To ignore a call for help went against everything Earth stood for. The debate raged, but the truth was simple. Earth could not unknow what it had heard. The signal had reached them, and humanity was already preparing to respond. It was decided in secret. No public announcement was made, no headlines revealed the truth. For now, only a handful of scientists, soldiers, and leaders knew. But in a hidden facility beneath the Atlantic, engineers began to prepare a reply. The message was simple, written in the same stripped-down mathematics the aliens had used. It carried coordinates, a greeting, and a promise. "We hear you. We are coming." Dr. Elias Rourke was among those who drafted it. His hands shook as he typed the final line. He knew what it meant. Humanity had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. When the reply was sent, a burst of energy cut across. The stars, racing toward the unknown. On Earth, the room was silent as the transmission ended. Some looked relieved, some looked afraid. Elias only whispered, "We've answered." Far away, in a darkened chamber on a distant world, a group of alien leaders gathered around a shimmering holoscreen. The beacon they had once sent had been meant for their allies, a desperate attempt to call for rescue. But the response they had just received was not from their allies. The language was different, the tone was strange, but the meaning was clear. Someone else had heard them. Someone knew. One of the aliens hissed, his crest rising in alarm. "It is them, the humans." The chamber fell into silence. No one dared speak. The galaxy had long feared that day, the day humanity would hear the wrong signal, the day they would awaken from their silence. And now it had happened. Humanity had answered. A response had been sent, and across the stars someone whispered in horror, "The humans have heard us." A ripple of silence spread through the control room after Earth sent its reply. The signal, wrapped in precise mathematics and stripped of every trace of human culture, was already on its way across the void. To those who stood in that hidden chamber, it felt like history itself had shifted. Humanity, once quiet in the stars, had spoken. For days, there was nothing but waiting. Scientists in the deep space arrays monitored every frequency, hoping for an answer. Politicians paced in their offices, wondering if they had just condemned their species. Soldiers prepared in silence, because deep down, everyone knew that sending the reply was not just communication, it was provocation. Somewhere out there, something had heard them. And far beyond Earth, in a distant star system where the distress beacon had first been sent, the message was received. An alien fleet, scarred and weary from endless war, picked it up first. Their translators worked quickly, reshaping the human numbers and symbols into meaning. When the words became clear, the commanders of the fleet sat in frozen silence. "We hear you. We are coming." No one spoke. Some trembled, others growled curses under their breath. The distress call had not been meant for humans. It was supposed to reach allies in the galactic core, powerful civilizations with fleets strong enough to stop the swarm that was tearing their empire apart. Instead, the signal had fallen into the hands of the one species every empire had hoped to avoid. The humans had answered. Panic spread quickly. In the great chambers of the Galactic Council, the news arrived like a storm. Every delegate remembered the old warnings, the stories told in whispers, that the Sol system housed predators, that humanity had been silent, not because they were weak, but because they were watching. Now that silence was broken. Some counselors argued for calm. Perhaps humanity would send aid. Perhaps they could be allies, tools to throw against the swarm. But others shook their heads. They remembered fragments of history, ancient wars fought in the shadows when humans first reached the stars. The Terran silence was not a weakness, it was a decision. And if they were choosing to speak now, it meant something dangerous was coming. On Earth, no one knew the depth of that fear. In secret facilities, engineers planned the first human expedition beyond their claimed borders. Military leaders studied. The alien distress message, analyzing the coordinates of battles already lost. And at the center of it all, Dr. Elias Rourke felt a gnawing dread. He had been the first to notice the signal, the first to decode it, the first to type humanity's reply. And now, as the hours turned into days, he couldn't stop thinking, what if answering had been a mistake? The galaxy was listening. Somewhere fleets were moving. Somewhere empires were whispering the same word, a word that carried fear into every council chamber and every command ship. Predators. The humans had answered, and the galaxy would never be the same. The expedition ship cut through the void like a spear of steel and fire, its engines burning faintly against the black. It carried no banners, no songs of peace. It was not a fleet, not an armada, only one vessel. But for those watching from the shadows of the stars, its arrival was like a thunderclap. Humanity had crossed the line. They had stepped into a galaxy that never wanted them to wake. On board the ship Artemis, the crew moved in silence. They were explorers, yes, but their ship carried weapons, hidden beneath armored hull plating. To the citizens of Earth, this was a mission of science, a journey to meet whoever had sent the desperate cry for help. But the soldiers strapped into the war stations knew better. This was reconnaissance. Humanity never walked blind into the unknown. Dr. Elias Rourke stood near the observation window, staring into the swirling clouds of the alien system that glowed ahead. It was the first time he had traveled beyond the safety of human territory. His heart pounded, not just from fear, but from something more dangerous, curiosity. The signal had begged for help. The closer they came to its source, the more Elias wanted to know what kind of enemy could force a starfaring civilization to call across the void. The answer came quickly. As Artemis dropped out of faster-than-light, travel, alarms blared. The system ahead was not calm, it was burning. A world spun below, its surface scarred by fire. Orbiting it, great ships traded lances of light and clouds of plasma. The crew gasped as the sight unfolded, an entire fleet, locked in combat. And for the first time, humanity saw the enemy. They were not sleek or elegant, like the imagined aliens of human dreams. The attackers were jagged, angular, their ships swarming like predators circling prey. Each vessel looked grown, not built, like shards of metal fused to living flesh. They moved with terrifying coordination, tearing through the defenders piece by piece. The defenders, those who had sent the signal, were no better off. Their ships were battered, their formations broken. Bright explosions flashed in the void, as one vessel after another was cut apart. It was not a battle, it was slaughter. The captain of Artemis, Commander Kira Hale, stood tall on the command deck. Weapons online, shields to full, prepare for engagement. Some of the crew hesitated. They were one ship against dozens, but humanity had never feared being outnumbered. Hale's voice was calm, her tone precise. Target the nearest hostile. Show them what it means to be answered. And with that, humanity fired its first shot in galactic war. The railguns roared. Slugs of tungsten screamed across the void faster than sound, faster than thought. They struck one of the jagged ships, and for the first time, the swarm faltered, its hull split apart, pieces scattering into the dark. The crew of Artemis cheered, but only for a moment, because the swarm had turned, like predators scenting blood. Half a dozen enemy ships broke off their attack and rushed toward the human vessel. Their weapons flared, beams of searing light cutting across space. The shields of Artemis flared, groaning under the impact. The ship shuddered as alarms screamed. "Return fire," Hale ordered. The void lit up. Missiles streaked out, guided by human hands, bursting into blossoms of fire against alien hulls. One ship shattered, another spun away crippled. But more kept coming. Elias gripped the console, his knuckles white. He had never seen war before. Now it unfolded in front of him, brutal and merciless, and he realized something terrible. Humanity was not retreating. Humanity was enjoying it. The gunners laughed, snarled, shouted as they fired. Each kill was a celebration, each victory a reminder that humans had been made for war. The swarm had chosen the wrong prey. Minutes stretched into eternity. One by one, the alien attackers fell, scattered by a single human ship's fury. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the battle shifted. The swarm retreated, their surviving ships pulling away, vanishing into the dark. For the first time, the defenders, the ones who had sent the signal, had a chance to breathe. On the battered alien command ship, the leader of the defenders stared at the human vessel in awe and terror. Their desperate call had been answered, but not by allies, not by saviors. By something far more dangerous. The humans had come. Back aboard Artemis, Commander Hale gave the order to stand down. The crew exhaled, the adrenaline still burning in their blood. Elias stared at the wreckage outside, the silence after the storm. Humanity's first true encounter with the wider galaxy was written in fire and death. But even as the ship steadied, a warning settled over the crew. The swarm had retreated, yes, but not defeated. They would return, and when they did, they would not come for the dying empire. They would come for Earth. Humanity had been seen. Their weapons, their ferocity, their will to fight. It was no longer a secret. The signal had brought them here, the battle had revealed them, and the galaxy had taken notice. In the alien council chambers, light years away, whispers spread. The humans had not only heard the wrong signal, they had answered. With fire, and the galaxy shuddered. Whispers moved faster than light. Long before the wreckage cooled in that burning system, before the smoke cleared from the dying world below, the story had already begun to spread. They said a new predator had entered the stars. They said one ship, only one, had faced the swarm and lived. They said the humans had answered. In the great trade stations, merchants lowered their voices when speaking of Earth. In the deep courts of dying empires, old rulers stirred uneasily in their thrones. On mining colonies, soldiers spoke of the humans with both awe and fear, repeating tales that grew darker each time. 100 different versions of the story raced through the galaxy. Some claimed the humans had destroyed entire fleets with a single strike. Others whispered they fought like beasts, laughing as their enemies burned. Many didn't believe it at first, until the reports came from the survivors of the defending fleet, limping home with the truth etched in their eyes. The defenders had expected extinction. They had called for salvation, and salvation had come, but in the form of something the galaxy had long tried to forget. On Earth, the truth was hidden. The people were told nothing of the signal, nothing of the battle. But in secret rooms, leaders read alien reports intercepted through back channels. They studied the fear spreading like wildfire, and many of them smiled. Fear, after all, was power. Dr. Elias Rourke didn't smile. He had seen the battle up close. He had seen the swarm tear through ships, seen the human gunners laugh as they fired back. He remembered the silence after the swarm fled, the strange satisfaction on the faces of his crewmates. The defenders had called the humans saviors. Elias wasn't so sure. Far across the stars, the Galactic Council convened in an emergency session. The chamber was vast, filled with species from 1,000 worlds. Old enemies sat side by side, their voices trembling as they debated. One delegate slammed his claws against the table. "This is the moment we always feared. They are awake. The humans are no longer silent." Another, smaller and trembling, tried to argue. But they saved lives. They fought the swarm when no one else came. They fought because they enjoyed it. the first hissed. "Do you not understand what they are? They are predators, forged in war, sharpened by a death world. If they spread, if they rise, none of us will survive their hunger." The chamber fell into chaos. Some argued to ally with humanity, to turn their violence against the swarm. Others shouted for extermination before the predators could grow too strong. But all agreed on one truth. The galaxy had changed. The wrong signal had reached the wrong ears, and nothing would ever be the same again. On the quiet observation deck of the Artemis, Elias watched the stars slip by. The mission was not over. Humanity had been noticed. Their silence was broken, and as he gazed into the dark, he wondered if the galaxy's fear was not only justified, but too late. The chamber of the Galactic Council burned with light and noise. Holoscreens shimmered above the vast circular hall, each displaying different fragments of truth. The wreckage of swarm ships torn apart by railgun fire, the battered survivors of the defending fleet, the transmission logs of Earth's first reply. Every delegate could see it now, and no amount of denial could erase the fact. The humans had answered. Some spoke with hope. At last, the swarm has found its match. Did you not see? One ship, only one, turned the tide. Imagine what they could do if they stood with us. Their voices trembled with eagerness, with the desperation of those who had lost too much for too long. Others hissed in fury. "You are fools. Do you not remember the stories? The silence around Sul was not ignorance, it was warning. Predators sit on that world. You think them allies, but what happens when their hunger turns on us? What happens when they decide we are the swarm?" The argument split the chamber like a blade. Alliances that had stood for centuries cracked in an instant. Civilizations that once shared trade, fleets, and blood turned their voices against each other. The Council was no longer united against the swarm. It was divided over Earth. In hidden corridors, secret words passed. Some ambassadors whispered of covert missions to make contact with the humans first, to secure their favor before rivals could. Others whispered darker plans, preemptive strikes, quiet assassinations, fleets that could wipe Sul clean before humanity's power truly bloomed. And, in the shadows, an older voice spoke, one few wanted to hear. "It is already too late. They have shown themselves. They will not go back to silence. We can only choose whether we stand beside them or beneath them." Meanwhile, on Earth, fragments of these debates reached the ears of leaders in hushed, coded transmissions. Humanity's first venture into the wider galaxy had not only revealed an enemy, it had sparked a war of fear and opinion across the stars. Some powers reached out with cautious offers of alliance. Others went silent, their intentions darker and far less certain. Dr. Elias Rourke felt the tension in every word he overheard aboard the Artemis. He had wanted discovery, understanding, the wonder of first contact. Instead, he had found a galaxy tearing itself apart, all because one distress beacon had crossed the void and touched Earth. Far away, in the darkest chambers of the Council, a decision was made in whispers. A faction would not wait for debate. They would not wait for the humans to grow stronger. Already they were mobilizing ships. Their course was set. Their mission was simple: strike Earth before the predators spread. And as those fleets began their silent journey toward Sul, the galaxy held its breath. The skies above Earth had never known such silence. In the depths of the solar system, where Neptune's orbit brushed against the edge of the void, something unnatural stirred. A fleet was coming, its engines burning faintly against the dark, its weapons already primed. It moved with purpose, with secrecy, with the cold certainty of a blade sliding toward an unguarded throat. The aliens thought Earth would never see them coming. But humanity was not blind. In the command hub buried beneath the Atlantic Ocean, alarms, whispered first, then screamed, Deep space telescopes caught the faint shadows of warships sliding between stars. Trajectories were calculated in seconds. There was no doubt they were coming for Earth. In conference rooms, the debate ended at once. There was no longer time for fear or hesitation. The predators had been marked. Now they would bare their teeth. The fleet entered the solar system in silence. Sleek ships carved for war, blackened and scarred from countless battles, closed in on their target. Their commanders expected panic. They expected surrender. They expected Earth to be what it looked like, young, fragile, untested. What they found instead was fire. As they crossed the orbit of Mars, Earth's defenses woke. Rail batteries hidden in orbit flared to life. War satellites, once thought to be mere experiments, unfolded their wings of steel. From the surface of the moon, silos opened and missiles climbed into the void like rising storms. The first wave of alien ships barely had time to react. Slugs of metal tore through their hulls, piercing shields, shattering engines. One vessel split in half, its crew's screams vanishing into the void. Another spun out of formation, gutted by missiles that had stalked it silently across the dark. Then, humanity's fleet arrived. They did not emerge cautiously, one ship at a time. They came in formation, sleek vessels built not for exploration, but for war. The Artemis led them, scarred from its first encounter, but burning with a hunter's light. At its side sailed ships that no alien had ever seen before. Carriers, destroyers, ships bristling with weapons humanity had kept hidden until now. Commander Kira Hale's voice cut across the fleet with calm precision. They came here to erase us, show them Earth is not prey. The void erupted, railguns screamed, plasma fire painted the dark. Missiles darted and turned, striking like wolves against cornered prey. The alien fleet, so confident in its silent strike, found itself bleeding, breaking under the ferocity of Earth's defense. In the command decks of the attackers, fear spread like wildfire. They had expected a world too young to defend itself. Instead, they faced a predator that fought. With joy, with fury, with strategy sharp as blades. The humans didn't just fight to survive. They fought to win, and they laughed as the enemy burned. One by one, alien ships were torn apart, their hulks drifting lifeless through the system. The survivors turned, engines screaming, desperate to flee. They would not take Earth. They would not even scratch it, but humanity did not let them go unmarked. As the last ships fled into the dark, they carried with them scars that would never heal, and a message etched into every survivor's mind. Do not provoke the humans. In the silence that followed, the Earth breathed again. The skies above returned to calm, but the galaxy had heard what happened. Whispers spread faster than ships could travel. The predators of Sol had faced an armada and answered with thunder. Elias Rourke stood at the observation window of the Artemis, staring at the wreckage drifting among the stars. For a moment he felt pride. Humanity had survived. Humanity had triumphed. But behind that pride was a quiet, colder thought. The galaxy would never forgive this. The stars were silent again, but the silence was not peace. The wreckage of alien warships still drifted through the void, tumbling slowly toward the frozen dark. Earth had survived the assault. Humanity had stood its ground. Yet every leader, every soldier, every scientist who had witnessed the battle understood the truth. The galaxy was watching. Across thousands of systems, stories of the battle spread like wildfire. Some called humanity saviors, warriors who had faced the swarm and refused to bow. Others whispered darker words, reminders of what humanity truly was. Predators from a death world, hunters who had waited in silence until the galaxy made the mistake of calling them out. And then humanity spoke. The message came from Earth, broadcast in every frequency, translated into the simplest mathematical code so no one could mistake its meaning. It was not a threat, not a plea, not a demand. It was calm, steady, terrifying in its honesty. This is Earth. We did not seek war. We did not choose this fight. But if war is brought to our home, we will not stop until our enemies are ash and dust. We do not fear the dark. We do not run from it. We are the dark. The words echoed in every council chamber, on every colony world, in every fleet that drifted in the void. Some civilizations shuddered in awe. Others began to prepare their armies, convinced that humanity's rise meant the end of their own. The predators had revealed themselves, and no one could claim ignorance any longer. On the bridge of the Artemis, Commander Hale stood tall as the final line of the message was transmitted. Her officers watched in silence. They had fought, they had bled, they had seen what humanity could do against impossible odds. Now their secret was gone. The galaxy knew. Dr. Elias Rourke stared at the stars, a chill crawling through him. He remembered, decoding the first signal, that desperate plea for help. He remembered believing this would be discovery, the dream of every scientist, to prove that humanity was not alone. But what had they proven instead? That humanity was something to fear. And far away, in the ruined systems where the swarm gathered, the true enemy listened as well. They were not frightened, they were not awed, they were hungry. The humans had shown their fire, their rage, their strength, and the swarm turned its gaze towards Seoul with new purpose. The wrong signal had awoken a predator. But predators were not the only hunters in the galaxy. The swarm was coming. The galaxy did not sleep. Every council chamber, every military fleet, every colony perched on the edge of distant suns replayed the same transmission again and again. Earth's voice, calm, measured, yet laced with a promise of destruction, echoed across the stars. For some, it was hope. For others, it was terror. For all, it was a turning point. The signal that was never meant for human ears had changed. Everything. On Earth, leaders gathered in a chamber deep beneath the crust, the weight of history pressing down upon them. Maps of the stars glowed on hollow screens, highlighting empires that had once been strangers, now watching them with fear or envy. Some were preparing emissaries, others were sharpening their blades. Commander Kira Hale stood before them, scarred, but unbroken, a soldier whose name already carried whispers among alien worlds. "They know us now," she said, her voice steady. "They know what we are. There's no turning back. If they fear us, let them. If they come for us, let them. Either way, humanity will endure." But even as the words rang strong, doubt simmered beneath the surface. Dr. Elias Rourke sat at the far edge of the table, staring at the decoded fragments of the original alien cry for help. His hands trembled as he pieced together the final parts of the message, the lines he hadn't dared share until now. It was not only a distress call, it was a warning. The enemy that had driven the desperate aliens to seek aid was not a single empire, not a rival fleet, not a predator like the humans. It was something else, something vast, endless, and patient. A hunger that devoured suns, worlds and civilizations alike. The swarm was real, and the signal had not just reached Earth, it had awakened the swarm to humanity's existence. Across the void, in star systems long abandoned, the swarm stirred. Millions of living ships, each a fusion of flesh and machine, twitched at once like a predator sniffing blood. For centuries they had spread in silence, consuming those who stood in their path. Now they had heard a new sound, a new challenge. The humans had roared into the dark, and the swarm was listening. Back on Earth, silence filled the chamber as Elias shared the final truth. The wrong signal had done more than bring humanity into the galactic stage. It had marked them. It had painted Seoul as the next battlefield. No one spoke for a long moment. Every leader felt the same chill. Humanity had revealed itself as a predator. But what happens when predators meet something even worse? Finally, Kira Hale rose. Her eyes burned with resolve as she looked at her people, at the fleet commanders, at the scientists, at the leaders of Earth. "Then we prepare," she said. "We will not hide. We will not beg. The swarm will come, and when they do, they will learn what it means to awaken a death world. They will learn what it means to fight humanity." Her words were carried beyond the chamber, into the fleet, across the colonies, and out into the stars. Humanity was no longer an isolated world. They were no longer unknown. They were no longer silent. The wrong signal had reached humanity, and the galaxy would never forget.